This is the Church of St. Paul in the Desert.
In fact, I think I'll sit down too. Yeah. Now, I've got something in my hand here. You know what that is?
$1.
$1? Well, check that again. That's what we call inflation.
$5 bill.
Oh, 5? No, you're still off. 20. Now we're talking. This is a $20 bill. No. If it were Easter, I'd give it to you, but it's Lent. Sorry. $20 bill. Is it worth something? What's it worth?
It's worth mine is worth house money. House owners and rental property.
Could be used for all those things.
Yeah.
Well, how many Big Macs do you think you could get with this?
I have some.
How many do you think? 4, 5, 6, 7?
100?
How many? Probably not 100. They're not that generous. Maybe Whoppers, but not Big Macs. Now, so this is worth something, and you can go to a store or any place and give this to somebody and get stuff, huh? Now, I want you to do something for me, and it's going to sound weird, but I want you to do it. I'm going to put it down on the ground. I want you all to step on it and stomp on it. Can you do that? All right, go to it. Beat on it. Step on it, beat it. Don't tear it. You'll ruin the sermon. That's it. Go ahead, beat on it. Kick it. Smear it. Yep, have a ball. All right. Very good, very good. Okay, all right. Now give it back to me here. Okay. Oh, no, you didn't rip. Now I'm going to do this and all this and just crumple it up, make a mess of it, Oh, jeez. All right, now stomp on it again. Beat that thing to death. Go ahead, do it. Pound on it. Pretend it's in a dirty street and you're getting dirt on it. Oh, yeah, okay. Everybody get a shot? Okay. Let him get in there and beat on it too. Okay. Okay. All right, you can give it back to me now.
So we stomp on it again?
All right, now, that's all beat up, isn't it? Kind of crummy. Sometimes this is what happens to people. Sometimes we get beat up and stomped on, don't we? Something goes bad at school, teachers get mad at us, parents get mad at us, brothers and sisters get mad at us, we have disagreements, or we don't feel good, or we got a headache, or got sick. And sometimes people just say bad things to us and hurt our feelings. And sometimes that's how we feel, kind of beat up and kind of crunched and stomped on. It happens to adults, I know, and I think it happens to kids too. But you know what? And sometimes when this happens, you can get kind of blind and forget that you're loved. Because if you have a bad day and 3 or 4 things happen at once, it's really hard to be able to see that you're still okay and you're lovable because you're feeling kind of rotten. You're all beat up. But now watch this. Despite all of your stomping and beating and carrying on, I'm going to unfold this thing. And guess what? It's still $20. So, is it still worth $20? Did you go into McDonald's and get a couple of Big Macs, fries, a couple of shakes?
Yeah.
Still worth money, isn't it? Yeah. Well, you know what? It's just like you guys and adults and me. Sometimes we get beat up and feel pretty rotten and feel like we've been stomped on. But even in the worst days, don't ever lose sight of the fact that you're still worth a whole bunch, even if these things happen to you. You're still loved.
Gets me stuff with money.
Oh, really? Does she? Okay. Any questions?
I have a comment.
A comment.
Me and my dad counted my money, and I had $100.
Then you're worth even more than this guy. All right. Well, don't ever forget it. Okay. Last question.
Me too, but I had $100 too, but I spent it on my friend's gift.
Well, that's the way you shared it. That makes it worth even more. Okay, I'd give it to you, but I have to cut it up in pieces. Then it wouldn't be worth anything. But see you in Easter. All right. Yeah, you too. Good job. Good job.
Yeah, that was funny.
Don't steal this, Father. So, seeing is believing, or is it? We often think we see things, and we're not seeing anything at all. And in John's Gospel today, which is always on the symbolic level, there's often multiple meanings and confusions going on. I was thinking about this homily about the time a youth pastor was giving a sermon to kids, speaking of children's sermons, and he started off the sermon by asking a question, and he said, "Now, what's gray, has a long bushy tail, and collects nuts for the winter?" And there was a short pause, and then one of the older boys in the group said, "Well, I know the answer is supposed to be Jesus, but it looks like a squirrel to me." Jesus or a squirrel? Well, in our gospel today, a man who has serious ophthalmological issues, who cannot see physically, ends up through the interactions with Jesus, he becomes whole and is able to see. Meanwhile, most of the other folks in the story that we just read, disciples, church leaders, they end up at the end of the story, even though they have no ophthalmological issues, they end up being as blind as bats. And that's what's going on here. What are we seeing, and what are we not seeing? Well, I think it's obvious that blindness or darkness has many, many different meanings. For example, if I am absolutely certain that I am right about something, and I have no doubts whatsoever, and I am certain of that, and I'm not going to listen to you, I just might be blind. Or, if I think there's a certain group of people on this earth, a category, a group, a tribe, a bunch of folks from wherever, and I am certain that they're all bad, that they're a threat, that I don't want to be with them, that they're all categorically not okay, and I'm certain about that, I might be blind. If I think that I'm not worthy or loved or lovable for whatever reason, bad experiences, abuse, things I've done, and I feel I can't be forgiven, that I'm not even worthy of church, let alone doing church work, I might be blind. If I am caught in the throes, the darkness of depression, or perhaps unmitigated grief because someone I love has died and I can't let it go, or I'm struggling with some kind of addiction, and I'm blind because I can't see the joy or the light at the end of the tunnel because I'm just caught up in this darkness, then for all practical purposes, I'm blind. Several years ago in a Los Angeles hospital, it made the news one night, a lady died in the middle of the floor of the waiting room at an LA hospital. Her name was Mrs. Rodriguez, and she collapsed and died. And you could see in the video that made the news that night, various people sitting around, watching, seeing her but not seeing her. In fact, at one moment in the TV version of the news, the maintenance man even came in with a broom and started sweeping around her. You know, I don't think there was anything wrong with the optic nerve of that man, but he was blind. He did not see who was lying on the floor. I think the iconic story for us that's familiar, this kind of image, is Captain John Newton, the slave ship captain that gave us the song we like to sing, Amazing Grace. And you know, he for years operated in a profession that was disgusting beyond belief. Human trafficking. Toward the end of his life, he had a conversion experience and came to the conclusion that he could no longer do that. And we benefit from his words that he wrote, "Once I was blind, but now I see." And I am sure when Captain Newton walked the decks of that ship or thought about what was below decks, he was blind. He didn't see human beings with families and loved ones or relatives back on the beach in Africa wondering where they had all gone. He just saw product or profit. Several weeks ago, Father Andrew, in one of his sermons, mentioned the current movie about the African American women who worked in NASA. And remember, they had to walk a half mile practically to get to the ladies' room because they didn't have that facility nearby in those days. And remember what the Caucasian person said to them, never even thought about it. Sometimes blindness is so blind that we're not even aware of the fact that we're blind. Well, here we are in the Lenten season, which is the season that deals with darkness and blindness. We all have our version, don't we? In some way or another, we all share in this darkness. And the real purpose of Lent, by the way, historically and still, is to journey toward Easter and the baptisms of adults in the early church, and subsequently, for all of us adults who are already baptized, to renew our baptismal promises, whatever age we were baptized. And all of that is about light. And even though we make some snide remarks about seeing the light or not seeing the light, the fact is that for much of the literature, especially in the early church, and still, the primary image of baptism was illumination, to be illumined, to be filled, overwhelmed, soaked in light, so that the darkness is revealed and cast aside. That's as good an image as I know of what baptism really means. The darkness has to be brought up into the light. And if you can think about some of the scandals that you've heard about in the church or elsewhere, no matter what they were, no matter how bad they were, it's not just our Roman Catholic friends who have struggled with this. All churches have struggled with these kinds of things. You know that as long as it's held down and kept secret, avoid scandal at all costs, you know that it festers and it grows and it's cancerous. And the only way to heal it, even though it's embarrassing and difficult and all of that stuff, is to bring it up into the light, to talk about it and deal with it up front where the light can cast itself on the darkness. That's the only way that healing can take place. Only way. In the monastic world, when a monk takes their final vows, it's somewhat parallel to ordination. And at least in some orders, the candidate will lie prostrate on the floor in the chapel while they're prayed for and the Spirit is invoked, just like in an ordination. A funeral pall is put over them, a symbol of darkness and death. And after they've been prayed for and all of those sorts of things, and they're helped up, and the text that is used is right smack in this epistle today. Sleeper, awake, arise, and Christ will be your light. That's what the life is all about. I am very grateful for modern parables as well as biblical parallels or parables to bring these things to light. And I think one of the greatest movies that was ever given, and you're all familiar with it, I'm sure, was Forrest Gump, Tom Hanks and Robin Wright. In that story, to make it very quick, we have this man who's mentally deficient, below average IQ, played brilliantly by Tom Hanks. And he has this childhood sweetheart, Jenny. They grow up together, they're buddies. As he says in the movie, they're like peas and carrots. And as they grow up together, it's pretty obvious that Jenny has some real issues. We see a very poignant scene where she is taken out of the father's home, obviously because of some kind of abuse. And they grow up and they get older, and Forrest is in love with her. He loves her as a buddy. He wants to marry her. He doesn't understand why she won't have him. Jenny doesn't see him as a husband, lover. He's, after all, a little bit slow. And we see vignettes throughout the movie where Jenny makes very bad decisions. She messes with drugs. She gets involved with the wrong people. She almost commits suicide at one point. But toward the end of the movie, after a long journey, it was probably very gradual, someone like this man in the gospel today slowly getting it. After a pregnancy, becoming ill, it's unclear what the illness is, and she's older, she begins to see things differently. And eventually, she herself approaches Forrest, this man who's mentally deficient, who's so awkward, and she asks him, after all, to be married. Because all that time, Jenny was blind. She could not see that this man really did love her, and it was not deficient love. He may not have had a great IQ, but his love was not deficient. But she couldn't receive it. She couldn't see it. She was blind. And so, as Captain Newton would say, once I was blind, now I see. Well, what Lent's all about really is Easter. Lent's ridiculous without Easter. And Easter is where we celebrate that light in the long run overcomes darkness. Light can't be seen very well in the daytime. It's in the darkness that light really shines best. And there is no more greater darkness than what Jesus goes through in Good Friday. When the Amish school shooting took place several years ago now, Nickel Mine School in Pennsylvania, one of the many now horrifying events of gun shooting in schools, 5 young girls were killed. Someone asked the Amish bishop or leader, probably with a little angst in his voice, so where was God in all of that? And the Amish bishop said, I think God was in the same place that day as he was on Good Friday. It doesn't get any darker than that. One who was innocent dying by public, barbaric torture. In fact, we're even told in the Passion accounts that a darkness came over the earth that afternoon. And I think not only that, but Jesus himself became blind. My God, why have you forsaken me? I don't think he was piously quoting Psalm 22. He was blind. In that horror, he could not see through to the light on the other side at that moment. He shares our blindness. And that's the whole point. Why did Jesus have to die? Because we die. Why did Jesus have to go through horrible darkness? Because we do. And all of our darknesses, whatever they may be they medical, emotional, social, money, security, self-worth, you name it, all those darknesses are captured up and laid at the foot of the cross. That's why it's so important. We worship a God who's been there and done that. By the way, that's why we light the Paschal candle in the night between sunset and sunrise, because light shines best in the darkness. And it's in the midst of the worst darkness that the best light shines. And we are told in the Gospels that the light will overcome the darkness will never win, not in the long run. So whenever we have our Easters, whenever we, like Jenny, finally see, or like Captain Newton, finally see, those are our Easters. And when Easter happens, it's like being blinded by the light. And ironically, when we're blinded by the light, that's when we can really see. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.